This is why the Ole Miss Rebels will defeat the Arkansas Razorbacks. We give you the answer key before Saturday's test.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hello, I'm Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media and a former Ole Miss staff member. Today, we're diving into why Lane Kiffin and the Ole Miss Rebels are primed to beat the Arkansas Razorbacks in Saturday's matchup. This game is a chance for Ole Miss to put together a clean performance, cutting down on those costly penalties that have allowed other teams to stay in the game. If they can play disciplined football against Sam Pittman's squad, the Rebels have a strong shot to win this game. We also talk about the defense and how they need to contend with Taylen Green and Jaxson Dart likely starting his march through the record books against the Hogs. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day. And a special hello to the insiders and everydayers who make this show what it is. And don't forget to find a second listen on the network. Chris Gordy at Locked On SEC, Zach Blackerby at Locked On Auburn, Corey Burton at Locked On Vandy. They all offer great perspectives on the SEC and Ole Miss even. Hey, check out Locked On Razorbacks and John Neighbors as well. You can start the season off with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. This game is an interesting game because of where the game is being played. That is what really makes this game interesting. So, because if you look at the teams on paper, the way they sit on paper, Ole Miss should win this game. Ole Miss has probably a better football team than Arkansas. But where that game is located is going to give a lot of Ole Miss fans pause. And honestly, it should. Ole Miss won in 2000, Ole Miss won in 2008, and that's it for Fayetteville. Ole Miss can win in Little Rock. Ole Miss can win in Oxford. Ole Miss struggles in Fayetteville for whatever reason. In 2014, Hugh Freeze took a team that was just coming off of being in the college football playoff rankings up to Fayetteville and got beat 30-0. You know, we all know what happened the year after that, the Houston Nutt stuff, all the way back to Creek Mitchell and the hit in 1990. We all know about all of that stuff. So every Ole Miss fan is going to worry about this game, whether or not they need to. But on paper, Ole Miss has the superior team. And the thing that has held Ole Miss back this season and both of their losses is the inability to play clean. And what I mean by that is not making mistakes, unforced errors against your opponent that give them a shot to bring everything a little bit closer. That happened against Kentucky. That was potentially the most atrocious loss in modern Ole Miss history. It was an absolute terrible loss. But that loss wasn't because Kentucky beat Ole Miss. It was because Ole Miss beat Ole Miss. LSU wasn't because LSU beat Ole Miss. LSU was because Ole Miss beat Ole Miss. If you remove those unforced errors, there's not a team in the country that can defeat the Ole Miss Rebels. And I'm including the Georgia Bulldogs on that, by the way. So this game will be an opportunity to play like that Ole Miss game against Oklahoma in the third quarter. Here's the 3 bullet points of the game. Ole Miss will put together a clean game, and no one can beat them when they play clean. I just said that. Ole Miss will have a plan to hit Taylen Green early and often. This is a big game to where the defense can really control what was going on. And honestly, the way that people are thinking about this Arkansas offense aren't exactly right. So we'll talk about that as well. And the Jaxson Dart everyone saw against Oklahoma will appear against Arkansas. And this is going to start the Jaxson Dart kind of march through the record books that's going to happen over the next 4 games of passing yards, total offense, winning as quarterback. Pretty much all the records that are meaningful for the quarterback position, Jaxson Dart has a chance to own them all. That is pretty cool to see. Players to watch in this game, it's pretty simple. Jaxson Dart, obviously he's the quarterback. The quarterback in modern college football, it's important to play well. So the quarterback's always going to be on this list. Ulysses Bentley got promoted on the depth chart for whatever that means. I mean, that did happen. So we'll get to see if Bentley plays a more significant role against Arkansas. Now, remember, this is important to remember. There were a couple of games in 2023 where Ulysses Bentley was able to go off and he was a matchup problem. Ulysses Bentley is a big reason that Ole Miss was able to beat LSU in 2023. Ulysses Bentley played against LSU in 2024, ran for over 100 yards. Another game that Ulysses Bentley really stood out was the Arkansas game in 2023. That's another game that Ole Miss kind of took control of because of Ulysses Bentley. This game, I think you should look to see if Ulysses Bentley can repeat that. And Sontaran Perkins and even Jared Ivey, but mainly Sontaran Perkins, with Taylen Green being the running threat that he is going to be tasked with spying him quite a bit. That athleticism as Ole Miss attempts to get after the quarterback. This Arkansas team does not do a ton of straight just drop back passing. They do a lot of play passing. They do a lot of things that it's a little bit different. And because of that, it might not be as easy for Ole Miss to get the pressure that they need to do. So Ole Miss needs to stop the run game to prevent the run game. Like Jaquindon Jackson, the starting running back from the beginning of the year, is not going to play in this game. He was out on the injury report on Wednesday. But though they have a true freshman that's pretty good, he's likely going to run the ball quite a bit. And we'll see if Ole Miss can stop the run and stop the play action pass and force Taylen Green to do drop back passing. Ole Miss's defensive line can eat as well. So those are the three keys of this game. And playing clean is by far the most important one. Ole Miss needs to play a clean game. We're 9 games into the season. And I tell people all the time that at some point Ole Miss is going to do to somebody, as long as there's something to play for and they're still invested, they'll do what Georgia did to Ole Miss a year ago. They're going to put it together against somebody. And you're going to look up and say, man, what might have been? Everybody's going to look back at that game and say, man, that was unbelievable. And there are a couple of options that Ole Miss could go in this way, but Arkansas would be a decent option for everything to kind of click. Like I said, Ole Miss fans are going to be very trepidatious of playing that game in Fayetteville and what has happened to Ole Miss in Fayetteville. And teams that Ole Miss they've expected to win the game, they might have had a better team than the Arkansas Razorbacks. They get up there and for whatever reason, it just doesn't work out. So we'll see exactly how that goes. It's 11 o'clock Saturday morning on ESPN. It's going to be a big game. It's going to be a large game. It's going to be imperative for Ole Miss's defense to lock down Taylen Green. It's going to be imperative for Jaxson Dart to replicate what he did in the second half against Oklahoma, carry that forward. If he's able to do that with a good defensive performance, Ole Miss is going to win this game going away. But I think this game has a chance to be close, and we're going to talk about that a little bit in the third segment. But we're also going to talk about the defense. Their offense isn't necessarily built to play catch-up at Arkansas, and Ole Miss knows that. Can Ole Miss Rebels defense keep Taylen Green under pressure and out of rhythm? Find out how they plan to frustrate the Hogs. What's up, Ole Miss fans? Our friends over at 5 Hour Energy know that being passionate football fans, it's not just a hobby. It is a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through the all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, and those agonizing second overtimes. That is why they've created the Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy shots with a special flavor called Fan Fuel, designed just for super fans like us. You know, the fans who are the first in the grove and the last to leave, we see you. We know what's up. You know what gave me my fan fuel this week? It was that moment when Jaxson Dart was scrambling out and it looked like Oklahoma was going to get him, and he slung it out to Micah Davis downfield, who caught the ball. That was a huge play, and the whole stadium was rocking. And with a big matchup against Arkansas just around the corner, The energy is electric. Everything seems to be falling into place for a big finish. 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan takes heart, skull, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate, ironing your jersey, that game day to-do list is never short. That's why the limited edition Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot is here to keep you going all season long. So what's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with a 5 Hour Energy. Get yours today at 5hourenergy.com. It's available and shipped nationwide. Let's go, Rebels. All right, so this is going to be an interesting game. And if you went back to Tuesday's show when I was doing my Keys episode, it was about Taylen Green and Ole Miss's defense needing to get it in on Taylen Green. But over the course of the week, I've been talking to different people and everything, trying to get a handle on, because the statistics for Arkansas is really good. They're the number 2 offense in the Southeastern Conference, right behind Ole Miss, but they don't paint the entire picture. And I had John Neighbors on the podcast yesterday, and he was talking about that. And he had this quote, which to me was very interesting. He said, if Ole Miss gets up by 2 touchdowns, 14 points, really at any point in the game, but especially in the second half, it's over. That was from John Neighbors of Locked On Razorbacks. And the reason for that is this Arkansas team is not the normal Bobby Petrino offense that everybody's accustomed to. High flying all over the field, scoring a ton of points. Now, Arkansas scores a good number of points. They can do whatever, but this isn't a team that is designed to play catch up. Everything is predicated on the run game and play action in this Bobby Petrino offense. Now, they do a lot of stuff with Taylen Green that he did with Lamar Jackson at Louisville because of the athleticism that Taylen Green possessed. He is going to give Ole Miss fans flashbacks of seeing Matt Jones for those 10 years that he played for Arkansas, because he is tall, he is lanky, and he's athletic. He's not quite as good as Matt Jones, but he's enough there that it's going to basically trigger warning some Ole Miss fans. So Ole Miss needs to figure out a way to hit him early and often. We talked to John Neighbors about this, and he said Taylen Green has a problem with kind of keeping his confidence up. He said the difference between him and Matt Jones is Matt Jones just didn't care. If something went wrong, it just didn't faze him. He was that type of athlete, play the next play, play the next play. Taylen Green can get frustrated and let it linger. So it's going to be imperative on Ole Miss defensively to frustrate Taylen Green. When you look at Ole Miss's defense, they're number 2 in the country by 1, I think, behind Boise State, in sacks with 34. They are number 1 in tackles for loss with 81. They are number 1 in the nation in scoring defense at 11 points per game. Ole Miss defense is perfectly designed to frustrate a quarterback like Taylen Green. Now, here's the problem that you could have. He is just athletic enough. He can make you hurt. And against Oklahoma and against LSU, Ole Miss was very reliant on 2-man. That's 2 safeties deep, man coverage underneath. You are not going to play 2-man against an athletic cornerback or quarterback. You're going to have to set the defense up a little bit differently. Now, I'm sure that Ole Miss is going to do some 2-man, and they're going to try and spy him and all that, and it's going to be imperative that Ole Miss makes the play on that down because of what could happen if it goes wrong. Taylen Green has the athletic ability, no matter where he's on the field, to take it to the house. Period. Not even close that could happen. But if Ole Miss can put together a decent game plan, complete with a decent number of blitzes while containing the quarterback, I think Ole Miss has a shot. And when you have a player like Taylen Perkins, who this season has 41 tackles, 12 tackles for loss, 5 quarterback hurries, 8.5 sacks. Listen, he is 15 pounds away from being Will Anderson. He is 15 pounds away from being an absolutely destructive force in the Southeastern Conference. He is already a dang good player. We talked about in the preseason how he could have an impact similar to what Corey Moore did at Virginia Tech in the 1990s. Taylen Perkins is doing just that. to where weight is not a detriment of what's going on. And a lot of that has to do with what Pete Golding is doing with him and what he is being asked to do. He's not being asked to necessarily set an edge. He will do it from time to time, but he's not predictable in doing it to where the offense can't just run off tackle directly at him all the time. It is really good and really cool what Pete Golding is doing. Now, if you look at the Arkansas offense, just the same. Taylen Green, 151 for 249. He's thrown for over 2,000 yards. He has 11 touchdowns. He has 7 interceptions. They are okay in the red zone. They went 9 for 9 against State, but they're okay in the red zone. But they're really good on third down, and that has to do with the athleticism of Taylen Green. If you want to dig deep on this team, they are number 75 in the country in sacks allowed. Their run offense is actually pretty good, coming in at number 27 in the country, and that allows them to score 33.2 points a game. Although their numbers and offense is actually fairly close to what Ole Miss is scoring, some of that has to do with the Arkansas Pine Bluff game that they played earlier in the season. So keep that in mind as well. And as a running attack, I'm telling you, Taylen Green, 95 carries, 395. This is after sacks, 5 touchdowns. And Arkansas has 22 rushing touchdowns. Ole Miss has given up 1, and that was on that fluke play that Kentucky scored on that was fumbled into the end zone. The other defensive end that has a chance to have a big role in this game is Jared Ivey. 22 tackles, 7 TFLs, 4 quarterback hurries, 6 sacks. And don't forget about Princely and Monmielen as well. All of these players have a chance to have a major league impact on this game and on Taylen Green. The whole purpose of this Ole Miss's defensive attack should be to frustrate Taylen Green. Stop the run, make this young guy beat you, and frustrate him, hit him, find a way to get him out of rhythm, and find a way for him to throw it up to your team. If Ole Miss can do that, they're going to be in good shape. Now, lastly in this game, pretty interesting stuff. This is kind of where Jaxson Dart is set to march into the record books at Ole Miss. And this is what I mean by that. Ole Miss is currently tied with the modern record, which is essentially the complete record. They just didn't want to go back prior to 1968, but they didn't play enough games to where any starting quarterback has won over 24 games. I mean, no, there's a reason they keep the record like they do. Jaxson Dart with 1 more win becomes the winningest quarterback in the history of Ole Miss with 25 wins. And that is with Arkansas this week, Georgia next week, a bye week, at Florida and Mississippi State. Those are the last 4 games. If Jaxson Dart wins one of those games, he becomes the winningest quarterback in Ole Miss history. He's about 250 yards short of the total offense record. He should break that against Arkansas this weekend, passing Bo Wallace for number 1 all time. And he'll get close to second place in passing yards this week as well, which will again be passing Bo Wallace, getting ready to take Eli's record. Again, Jaxson Dart is going to own basically every quarterback record that you can have at Ole Miss with the exception of passing touchdowns. He is not going to break that. So Eli is going to get to keep that, but it all starts in Fayetteville. Lots of stuff. There's a lot of demons that need to be exercised up in Fayetteville. And we talked to John Neighbors, and the only team that they've seemingly played well against at home is Ole Miss. Ole Miss is due for Arkansas to not play well at home against them. They seem to seemingly always do it. In 2022, they were up 42-7 on Ole Miss in the third quarter. In 2020 was the Matt Corral 6 interception game. In 2018, they played in Little Rock. That was the Ole Miss come from behind, Dawson Knox, Jordan Ta'amu, all of that. Ole Miss can win in Little Rock. Ole Miss wins in Oxford. They need to figure out how to win in Fayetteville. And that is what gives Ole Miss fans a little bit of pause about this game, because if you look on paper, Ole Miss probably has the better team. So get ready, Rebel fans. We're breaking down our final thoughts on the Ole Miss-Arkansas game. Key plays, standout moments, and what a win this season means going forward. Do not miss it. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. You know, Ole Miss is currently, I think, a 6.5-point favorite over Arkansas, but we all know how weird this series can be. But when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel. It's an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Hey, congratulations also to the LA Dodgers. It's weird to think the Detroit Tigers won the series against the Dodgers this year, so it kind of makes me feel pretty good about what the Tigers can do. Now, let's close this loop a little bit. If you want to look at the line of this game, this is what it's looking right now. Ole Miss is about a touchdown favorite over Arkansas, 6.5 points. The over-under is dropped down to 53.5. I think the under is the play in this game. I don't think I would mess with a point spread in this game, and I don't think I would deal with really a money line. I think the under is the play in this game, with a chance that it could rain in Fayetteville and Ole Miss's defense being as good as they are. Ole Miss has given up 11 points a game. Arkansas, when they played against Tennessee, gave up like 10, 11, something like that. It wasn't many. So there's not going to be a whole lot of points scored in this game because both of these defenses are doing a really good job of eliminating explosive plays. When you have Taylen Green and Andrew Armstrong and those guys offensively, obviously they provide a little bit of a warning. You got Landon Jackson on the Arkansas defensive side of the ball that you need to pay attention to. But if you look at it overall, I think the under is the play on this game. This is where I think this game is going to go. We've talked all week about what could happen. We all know how difficult it is to win in Fayetteville, but I'm going with Ole Miss 24, Arkansas 10. I've moved it up from 17-10 or something like that yesterday, but this is my final score, lock it in prediction, Ole Miss 24, Arkansas 10. And the reason I think that is I think Ole Miss is going to frustrate Taylen Green. I think they're going to hit Taylen Green. I think that Ole Miss's offense is going to be just good enough to win the game. Arkansas is going to play very well. They're going to have a good game plan. But if Trey Harris does not make it back, on Wednesday he was listed as questionable, that gives me a little bit of pause of what could happen on the outside. Now, I do think it's very imperative for Ole Miss when Trey Harris comes back to incorporate him into what was happening in the Oklahoma game plan, as opposed to reverting back to exactly what was happening before he got injured. I realize that Trey Harris is probably the best wide receiver in all of college football, but you still need to make sure that all the options are being used because, as Mike Leach said, balance is not 50-50 run pass. It is the number of touches that all of your offensive stars get. And the more that it is lopsided, the more that a defense can take that away, and eventually they can take away your offense because everything is built around a singular thing, and you can just do that. We talked all off season about how this transfer portal class that Ole Miss brought in was about removing double teams from Trey Harris. And then whenever you throw it over and over to Trey Harris, they just double team anyway because you don't have to worry about the other players. So they did a decent job of just sinking deep because they didn't have to fear the other playmakers that Ole Miss had. Against Oklahoma, that began to change just a little bit. And if it continues to go, Ole Miss is going to be a very, very hard team to beat. If anybody watched the season on Wednesday night, Lane Kiffin actually talked about this post-game. In the second half of the game, he said, when you play like this, you are very hard to beat. And he's not joking. This team can be very, very good, but they need to play clean. Let's go back to the main points. Ole Miss needs to put a clean game together, and nobody can beat them when they play clean. I am convinced of that. And Ole Miss needs to plan to hit Taylen Green early and often. They need to frustrate this young man. And the Jaxson Dart that everybody saw in the second half of the Oklahoma game is going to appear and reappear against Arkansas as he marches through the record book as well. Really exciting stuff. I think that Ole Miss is a better team than Arkansas, but the game is in Fayetteville. And the game being in Fayetteville is going to make Ole Miss fans nervous just because of the history there. Has nothing to do with how good Arkansas is. Although I talked with John Neighbors the other day. I don't know that there's real animosity at all between Ole Miss and Arkansas. I think that it's a fun game that both fan bases kind of get ginned up for. But it's not like a Mississippi State thing to where we're Earth and Snurf. No, we don't do any of that. And the LSU game is heated because of all the history and the years. Arkansas is a rivalry. It's a big rivalry, but it's different. They don't actually play for anything except for bragging rights. And the game is always just absolutely stupid. It doesn't matter if it's Matt Luke versus Chad Morris, Hugh Freeze and Brett Bielema, or Sam Pittman and Lane Kiffin. It's going to be weird. That's just the makeup of how they do things. So Ole Miss fans are going to be nervous, even though, and especially now, when you look on paper and Ole Miss probably has the better team on paper. Ole Miss is only a 6.5-point favorite in this game. The reality of it is, if you wanted to go talent-wise, Ole Miss is probably closer to a 10 or a 13-point favorite over Arkansas in this game. But because of where the game is, because of the history, because Ole Miss dropped a game against Kentucky earlier in the season, dropped a game against LSU earlier in the season, it's caused the line to shift down just a little bit. This is a absolutely massive football game. It's one of the biggest games in Ole Miss program history because of what it could mean, not because of the actual game on Saturday. Blah. But if Ole Miss wins the game, it's an absolutely massive game. If Ole Miss loses the game, it's just another game. The season's over, essentially. But if Ole Miss wins the game and sets up what could happen the next week, it's absolutely massive for Ole Miss football. We'll see what happens. We're going to have John Macon McGillespie doing the pregame show. We're going to have Michael Katz, Tom Vanderford, all of that. You know, Tim Thomas last night came on and talked about basketball, getting ready for the Long Island game on Monday. SEC squad video is out and about. Lots of stuff on the channel right now. So we'll see exactly how it goes. Anyway, thanks again for making Locked On Ole Miss your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the #1 Ole Miss podcast. Your support means the world to us. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your show. Your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On SEC podcast. Host Chris Gordy holds no punches, covering the best conference in college football. Find Locked On SEC on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Also, exciting news. You can now become a Locked On Ole Miss insider, the best and easiest way to stay updated on all things Ole Miss sports. It is our texting program, and we send you notifications on anything relevant without all the hassle of message boards filled with trolls. Enjoy a 14-day free trial and experience the future of college sports coverage. Get the information and get on with your day. We're adding new perks as we grow, so don't miss out. The link is down in the description. And for those of you watching on YouTube, we're going to send you to Locked On College Sports right now. Hotty toddy, everyone.